Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Let's
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matt Moreno. And Matt, it's been a quiet offseason. It's been a lot slower than I think any of us would have hoped. And so anytime there is even a hint at a rumor, we start to feel ourselves, get into it, dig into it a little bit. We've got one of those. Jon Heyman, everybody's favorite baseball insider, saying that free agent shortstop Dansby Swanson, quote, appears to be a possibility for the Dodgers. Of course he is, right? Like, is that the reaction to this tweet?
That was definitely my first reaction, and then I kind of felt like, maybe Heyman is sort of hinting or implying that he's more of a possibility or more of an option at this point, considering Xander Bogaerts obviously is signed with the Padres. The Dodgers don't, and Trey Turner, of course, before that with the Phillies, and the Dodgers don't appear to be pursuing Carlos Correa, which, as we've discussed in prior videos, is allegedly the front office respecting the fans. My bigger belief is it's really that they just don't want to pay anybody. And that's kind of where, the Swanson one is interesting for me. I know neither one of us is particularly high on him, especially if it's going to come at kind of an exorbitant cost, which at this point, considering, I said, before Bogart signed on our live show, I don't see another shortstop getting 11 years like Trey did. And we finished recording, and 5 minutes later, Bogart signed for 11 years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that leads to, okay, we know the Dodgers, of course, are a possibility because he plays shortstop. The Dodgers need a shortstop. They have about $40 million. We all expect them to spend, and we're running out of players to spend that money on, which then leads to the conversation of Dansby Swanson himself. What do you make of Dansby Swanson, the player, and is he a fit on this Dodgers team?
I think he's definitely a fit, and he's a good player. I don't see him as quite the difference maker that a Trey Turner is, and I'm not the biggest Carlos Correa fan, but I think he's a bigger difference maker than Dansby Swanson as well. And I think you could even argue Bogaerts is. I think with Swanson, though, what you would get is a pretty steady player, both at the plate and defensively. And there's certainly value to that, and there's a lot to be said for being consistent and not dealing with some of the peaks and valleys that maybe other players may have. I guess, again, the biggest question for me, and it's tough to say because the market has been so crazy this offseason, is what is the cost going to be for Dansby Swanson? If it's somewhere in the 15 million to 18 million AAV, I could probably be talked into that for 5 or 6 years. But if it's going to take 7, 8, 9, 10 years to sign him, I just don't see that as being worth it.
Yeah, let's talk Dansby the player, and then we can get into the money real quick. We've talked about this before. He's coming off of a career year, 6.4 wins above replacement for Swanson. He hit .277 and OPS just under 800 with 25 home runs. Last year, 27 home runs and OPS around 750. Wins above replacement, 3.4. And you look back, basically, since he's come up and been a full-time player, so I'm going back to 2017, in those 6 seasons, he's actually only been above average offensively twice. When looking at weighted runs created plus, 100 is league average. He was 116 last year. He was 115 in 2020, 99 in the year in between 2021. And other than that, it's been well below average, you could say, offensively. Now, the flip side with Swanson is he's coming off a season in which he led the major leagues in outs above average. He was in the 100th percentile defensively. And going back over the last few years, he's been very good. 77th percentile in 2021, 99th percentile in 2020. And so I think we just need to be realistic about what Swanson is. Part of my issue with Swanson is he's been grouped into a tier with Correa and Bogaerts and Trey Turner in which he does not belong. Now, last year, he belonged in that tier. His wins above replacement was at or above all of those guys. But for his career, he's quite a big step below. And so if you're evaluating him on that regard, like if you're looking at it and saying, we're not shopping at the top of the market because 2 of the 3 guys are already gone, and Correa we've crossed off the list for some reason, we'll leave that vague and allow you to fill in the gap there. Then it comes to Swanson. Is Swanson a massive upgrade at shortstop for the Dodgers? Absolutely. Like, if you get a guy who's even average offensively, like, let's just play conservative here. If he's a 100 weighted runs created plus guy that maybe gives you 25 home runs and an OPS around 750, which is what he did in 2021, but plays above average to elite defense at shortstop, then I think That's a huge upgrade for the Dodgers in a system, by the way, where there's not another guy coming up. So just before we get to the money talk specifically, just the player, like I would argue that as soon as we detach him from the tier that he has been placed in this offseason, you begin to see a player that, even if he's not Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, he's a guy who could add a lot of value on the field to the Dodgers, as currently constructed.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you frame it that way, it almost seems like he's just more of a defensive, I don't want to say defensive minded, but his defense is probably his calling card at this point in his career, right? And
yeah,
I mean, if you also want to look at it as maybe the past few years he's been trending upward, we can't hold every player accountable for maybe struggling early on. Like we've seen that before, and maybe he just needed to get a little bit more experience and just kind of find himself a little bit. And who knows, like maybe last season is more or less what could be expected of him moving forward. And if that's the case, like then the Dodgers would potentially have a bargain on their hands. I think again, and I'll let this lead into the next conversation is, if you're signing him to basically be a very good defensive shortstop, not necessarily, unsure of what you're getting offensively, then it ties back to like, what is that contract going to look like?
Yeah, and I agree. And again, conservatively, let's say you get a guy who's like a 105 weighted runs created plus and a 90th percentile defensive shortstop. What's the cost of that type of player? And I was going back and forth, and some people on Twitter saying like, hey, look at the way that the market has shaped up. Like he's going to get overpaid. My response was, is it possible that the Padres, Rangers, and Mets are the three crazy people at the party and that everybody else is going to be far more reasonable? I think it is possible that that's the case. That if you're bidding against the Giants and the Braves, that these are organizations that think, it's funny to say similarly to the Dodgers because they're run by guys who have come out of the Dodgers organization. And if that's the case, then I think we can have reasonable conversations. Like, is it possible that Swanson maybe moved from 5 years to 6 years because of everything that's happened? Sure. Is it possible that he moved from $24 million to $26 million over 6 years? It is possible, but I'm beginning to think if you could get him for 6 years and $150 million, given the options out there at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't have qualified that as a success. But if you said, hey, do you want 11 years and $300 million for Bogaerts or 6 years and $150 million for Swanson, all of a sudden I'm interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what's interesting is the Giants are a team that a lot of insiders around baseball have kind of pegged as they're going to be really aggressive in the shortstop market, but their focus definitely seems to be more on Carlos Correa. And so I agree with you, like Dansby Swanson and frankly, even Correa, which we have talked about over the past week or so, like they could find themselves in the position where, those long-term lucrative contracts, like you just said, there are only a few teams who are willing to do that. And once those options are removed, the market could technically shift a little bit because now at this point, if, you don't have the Rangers out there who are going to throw big money at you, you don't have like the Padres, at least I don't think are going to make, another $300 million signing or
at shortstop.
Yeah. Or anything close to it. And so, like if the market shifts, like it could end up being favorable for the Dodgers. And I think that's where Andrew Friedman really flourishes and capitalizes because he does have the patience. And frankly, the Dodgers have the talent and the depth, even with their questions, to sort of play that long game. And I know I've been on here questioning, like, maybe they should have done a little bit more. We have a clip of you saying Andrew Friedman has done nothing that's been playing, that's, looped over and over.
It's a lie.
So it could be interesting. And if I still think the Braves are probably the favorite because I think they would be the middle ground of they're not going to completely undervalue or underpay Swanson if there still isn't, a huge contract for him out there.
Yeah, I mean, the Braves have no history at all of having one of their own guys hit free agency and sign a really reasonable deal with someone else, right? And that's the hope, is they literally just did this with Freddie Freeman a year ago, who meant infinitely more to the organization than Dansby Swanson did, and is a far better player. And the Freddie Freeman deal to me, like, we're looking at these 11 years Xander Bogaerts deals, like, just try and compare that to the fact that Freddie Freeman signed the contract he did a year ago. It's absolutely bonkers that Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts are getting paid further into their careers than Freddie Freeman is nuts to me. And so I just think there's a possibility. Let me end with this question, Matt, because if we had begun the offseason and told people, hey, the Dodgers are going to sign Dansby Swanson, I know I'll speak for me, I would have been disappointed. I would have said, man, I don't like him as much as the top three guys, even Correa, all the off-the-field stuff. As a player, I could talk myself into it, obviously. And yet, now that we've we're in reality of where we are, and Bogarts and Trey Turner got the deals that they did, which, as a guy who liked Xander Bogaerts and was okay with Trey Turner, I would not have been super fired up about either of those contracts, even if it meant I got to keep the guy. Now, I think, given the circumstances, given the desperation, it feels like on our end, not on Andrew Friedman's end, I don't think he's ever desperate. I think I would be fine with this signing. Again, is it a 9-year deal? Is it 30 million plus? Then no, I'm out. But if it's 25, maybe even 26 million for like 6 years, I think I could talk myself into it because I'm looking and saying, this gives the Dodgers a chance to be competitive. I think Swanson will age fine. I think he's going to play solid defense. And it doesn't force us to have Gavin Lux as the starting shortstop. Because they're just, like, if not Gavin Lux, we keep talking about these trades that may or may not be actually out there. And so at this point, even though we wouldn't have been fired up about it a month and a half ago, at this point, if Tuesday morning we wake up and Dansby Swanson has signed with the Dodgers, would you be excited about it? If the contract is, I won't even say within reason, but like 20% above within reason, would you be okay with it?
I think I would. I think, though, another thing that we kind of glossed over and didn't mention is he was extended a qualifying offer from the Braves. And so it's not just, the money and AAV and all that luxury tax implications for the Dodgers. It's draft picks, which Andrew Friedman and the organization clearly values. And it's also international bonus pool money. And so even all of that being said, at this point, I would feel like, okay, they at least short that up because it is a significant question mark. And at this point, I think the Dodgers they take the approach anyway of, wanting to, I think, sign kind of the best player available and then make it work because they have so much versatility throughout the roster. And I think they're in a situation now where you kind of need to look at, in terms of just ranking talent, the top free agents available, not by position or anything, just who is on the open market and going after them and looking at, what makes the most sense financially and all that. And I think Swanson is near the top of that list. Yeah, no, I agree. The qualifying offer is a great point because that is an added cost and is probably honestly part of the reason that he's still out there and might be affordable for the Dodgers. But maybe that's what you want. Like maybe it is giving up the draft pick in order to not have years 7 through 11 at $30 million. Maybe that's the give and take. But I do think there is something too. Maybe that the craziest people have left the party and now you've got reasonable people and these numbers are going to come down. We shall see. Let us know what you think in the comments below. As always, I'm sure it will be a lively discussion there. That's Matt. My name is Jeff. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Make sure you check out DodgerBlue.com for the latest. They will have all the news, all the rumors, all the reports. That's the best place to go. You can check out our podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. That's available via Apple, Spotify, Google. Just search for Dodger Heads. Enjoy the rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Dodgers.